Hello and welcome back to the AL Central Rundown. With me today, I'm Eric, and with me today is.
I'm Lee.
I'm Sam.
I'm Oren.
And I'm Dan.
And Dan. We're fully staffed. We have an entire division. We've done it. so, so yeah, Dan. Again, like all of us, I may have put a post in the Reddit. In the Cleveland Guardians Reddit, and Sam is completely overqualified for this, and he is going to join us. Agreed to join us. So Dan, go ahead and just introduce yourself. Who are you, sir?
Well, thanks first of all, thanks for having me. I'm Dan. I've been following the Guardians since I was a little kid, really. My first memories, actually, I shouldn't be a baseball fan, truthfully, because my first memories of the sport are sitting in my dad's big recliner in the living room in 1994, asking him if baseball was going to be on tonight, and him telling me, no, Danny, the players went on strike. I was very easily able to rebound from that, though, with how the rest of the 90s kind of went for my local team, and have been a Guardians fan / Indians fan before that, of course, ever since. Additionally, over the last few years, I had started writing online about the team for a number of different kind of local websites, that kind of thing. Most of my more recent work is at clesportstalk.com. Currently taking a bit of a hiatus from that, but doing this. So looking forward to being part of the team. I know one of the things you guys were talking about in the previous episode was kind of like best moments as a fan.
Yep.
I'll contribute to that. But mine is, surprisingly tragic. We haven't had a lot of highest highs here in Cleveland. Mine, the 2016 World Series Game 7. Rajay Davis hits a home run that barely clears the left field wall off of Aroldis Chapman, ties a game that felt like it was lost. I think we're down 5-1 early on. And but I remember in that moment, the only time I've ever felt this in my life, oh my gosh, we're about to win the World Series. Like the momentum was that I've never felt anything like that before. And during the rain delay, I called my dad and was talking to him about it. And then obviously tragic events occurred after that. But regardless of all that, even being on the wrong side of that, that was perhaps the best baseball game I've ever watched. And so that would be I'm going to make that both my best moment and my worst moment, actually, as I think
That's
about
fair. And they're within
it.
what?
But it genuinely in that moment was like, oh my God, like this is about to happen.
I thought it was a lock as soon as he hit that home run that
Yep.
Cleveland was going to win. Being a White Sox fan, I'm around the Cubs a lot, so you can't help but following them a good deal. And they felt like up until then they were like one of those cursed teams, like the Mets of recent years or whoever, where it's like they can't have nice things. And it was after blowing that lead, it's like there's no way they come back from this. But
Well, speaking of curses, I've lived through 2 Game 7 extra inning. Didn't happen. One of them I don't remember as well, but that one I remember vividly. And still, it's why we watch is the story along the way. So it's not all bad, but yeah, that's both my best and worst for sure.
No.
now that just made me think. 1997. So Edgar Renteria walked it off for the Marlins, right? Was that an extra innings?
Yes.
And then what was the other one then?
16.
2016. That was an extra innings too.
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yeah. 97. Jose Mesa blows the save in the 9th. I think they get to the 11th, and that's when Renteria singles, Council scores, and then obviously Davis's home run was in the 8th, and then played a couple innings. A rain delay happens, and then in I think the 10th or 11th, the Cubs took the lead.
There's this Detroit sports content creator I follow, Chris Castellani. Right after the Game 5 ALDS Game 5 from last year, he said, he in like his reaction video after, he also said, if baseball can bring this amount of pain, I have to also believe it could bring an equal amount of joy. I think that's why we follow sports, right?
Absolutely.
If it could be this painful, it has to be able to be this exciting too.
And unfortunately, that joy has to come at the expense of somebody else's fandom, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's
And
also like,
unfortunately,
that's another thing. You're so used to baseball, like you fail so many more times than you do any other sport. So like those lows you're kind of just used to, but yeah, those highs seem almost like higher because of them.
This wasn't on the itinerary at all, so I apologize for bringing it up. But I think that's one of the things the sport struggles with popularity is this. It's so hard to succeed all the time. Like I think
Right.
you have to be in tune with that as a fan. So
Right? Isn't that the saying? You're going to lose a third of the games. You're going to win a third of the games. What do you do with the other third that matters?
Yep. Which I like. It's a grind. That's what you gotta. It's really hard to have a hot take in baseball because like you play it the next game. So if you strike out, if you went 0 for 4 with 4 Ks, it you can wipe it away the next day. So I don't know. It's kind of ESPN proof. It's
Yeah,
not
you
LeBron
can
feeling.
you could go how you could have 4 great months and 1 bad month, and it just depends on timing and stuff on when if it matters for playoffs and stuff.
Well, and even just going with the playoffs, it's more of a crapshoot. Like you're just getting yourself a lottery ticket to get to the playoffs, and after that, like the team with the highest payroll doesn't win the World Series that often. The team with the best regular season record doesn't win the World Series that often. It's just who gets hot for 3 weeks and when you do it.
I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
statistics
last
say that you need to play like 250 games for the better team to have a 95% chance of winning. So 7 games is like, you know,
it's a
anyone can
crapshoot.
do that.
and that's just the nature of the sport. Like I know the NBA is completely different. Like there, I don't think you need even 82 that they play.
Right.
It's just the nature of baseball and I think hockey
Well,
too.
even like what's great is like the Angels have the best like example of this. They had two generational talents on their team and they couldn't even crack the playoffs. If you had that in the NBA, they're going to the finals and probably winning it. Like in football, I mean, it's much more of a team
Positional.
game, but
It's also very
still,
positional dependent. You need to have a star quarterback or a very good quarterback, or otherwise you're never going to get anywhere.
this is true.
Know
Says the
about
guy.
know about that one too.
Yeah.
Oh, the Browns! What are they doing?
All right. Well, awesome. So we have not breaking news, but we have a little news to go over today. The Guardians have made their first trade of the season by sending Tyler Freeman and getting back old friend Nolan Jones. Seems kind of like a random swap for outfielders, but Dan, like what are you thinking here?
I'll give this a shot. So first of all, I think this is a play to add some power to the roster. You know, um, Freeman played in a number of roles last year. He was the starting center fielder early on in the season. Ended up kind of moving in more of a utility role when Lane Thomas was brought on the team. And I thought that's maybe how a hybrid of how he was going to get used this year. Maybe start against left-handed pitching in center field, spell some guys around the infield along the way. And it seems that they've kind of taken the cost benefit analysis of that and decided to swap it out for Nolan Jones, who, has a history in the organization, was a highly touted prospect at one point, somebody who could provide power, and ended up getting shipped to Colorado for Juan Brito, who was actually part of the second base competition this spring. It doesn't seem like he's going to win the job, but that was the initial trade that was made. So they bring Jones back, and I think left-handed hitter, had an excellent 2023, not nearly as good of a 2024 with Colorado. A lot of fans here were disappointed when we shipped him off, and he had such a great 23 season. Well, we're going to have an opportunity to kind of reclaim him now, it seems, and I think this team improved significantly last year, specifically because they added some potential to hit the ball over the fence. And I think the most likely scenario here is Jones plays every day in right. What that means is Will Brennan, who was probably going to start against right-handed pitching in right field, probably going to move out of that role. I think he'd ultimately probably be the fourth outfielder on the team, but wasn't hitting to the level that Jones could potentially hit as far as doubles, home runs, etc. So I think that was the decision that was made there. The other thing I think that kind of happens here is it says some things about other players on the roster. The biggest thing is I think this suggests that Kyle Manzardo, who is going to kind of ascend into the DH role most days, is going to face both right-handed and left-handed pitching. Had Freeman been playing center field against left-handers, that likely would have meant Lane Thomas would play right, and John Kenzie Noel would have the flexibility to DH in Manzardo's spot. Losing Freeman likely means that Noel is playing right instead of Jones, and Lane Thomas is playing center field every day. So, it says something about Brennan. It says something about how they feel about Noel and about Manzardo, as well as, I think there's the potential that Jones could play right field, at least against right-handed pitching.
I just can't figure out why Colorado made this move. What do they see in Tyler Freeman, and wouldn't they? Nolan Jones seems like the obvious guy you'd rather have on your team, no matter what your needs are.
I do want to point out before, not to cut you off, before you explain that, I did this Savant page that I took a screenshot of is of Nolan Jones's 2023 because that's what he was. He was injured last year, so his looks more like Tyler Freeman's last year. But if you look at he only had 300 plate appearances last year, and he had very little power. He had a 641 OPS and 3 home runs in those 297 plate appearances. So
that's in Colorado too.
In Colorado.
Yeah. So it's a really good question. Freeman does bring some things. Like I said, he brings positional versatility, a good glove. He genuinely doesn't have the power potential that Jones does, unless they know something, unless they think they can unlock something there. I don't know enough about the Rockies to really know. I know they have a lot of needs. So maybe just a guy that can play a bunch of positions and do it fairly adequately is what they're – and more maybe that's like, okay, what do they know about Jones that this isn't, possible to turn around? But it is a good question of kind of what they see in Freeman.
Yeah. I mean, just going back with Jones too, he did have back issues last year, but Cleveland taking him back might be a redemption story. But I might be wrong, but Cleveland's known for developing pitchers, not turning hitters around. So I do kind of question that, what they do see, and if you can trust what they think they see.
They think they're starting to. I don't want to say starting to figure out hitting because that sounds like it's worse than it is. But they think they're kind of on a pathway now where they're turning around some guys hitting wise, and that's still yet to be seen. But guys like Noel and Manzardo that I was just talking about. But I will say I don't think internally they think they are awful at developing hitting. It's just something that's not kind of worked out as well as the pitching has.
That's fair. All right. The other news, not as fun as a trade. The White Sox got hit with a Tommy John. So Oren, go soak in some tears here.
Yeah. I mean, he's young. It seems like every good young pitcher these days gets Tommy John. It's a good year to miss out because it would have been nice to see him develop, but obviously we're not competing for anything this year, so it's not a huge loss in terms of moving the needle on our success this year. But it's never good when a guy gets hurt. But as far as injuries go, a pitcher getting Tommy John doesn't really raise any alarms these days. It's kind of just like, oh well, see you next year.
Right. If we didn't say his name, it's Drew Thorpe too. That's my bad for not actually saying his name. He was part of the Dylan Cease trade last year and debuted last year. This is what he showed up. And then did he leave the season early last year also? Was he hurt?
I don't know if he was hurt or it was just a standard innings limit type situation. He was a legitimately decent pitching prospect, though. I don't remember if he was in the top 100 or anything. Oh, it says right there, top 85. Yeah. So, it's something. He would have been one of the guys to keep an eye on this year, and you don't have many of them, so that sucks. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that's too bad. We'll see him next year. I'd ask you what the White Sox are planning to do about that, but we're about to go into it. So today, the bulk of what we're talking today is we're going to be talking season previews of the White Sox and the Twins, and Oren has has a challenge in front of him to do. So, Oren, take it away.
All right. Well, everyone knows how last year went for the White Sox. Historically bad season. Um, that can only happen if you have about as bad of an MLB team as you can put on the field, and you get about as unlucky as you can. And both of those things happened. And 41 wins. That's the result. Um, it should be, just regression to the mean should mean that they're closer to probably like a 55 win team. Say Vegas has the line at 54 and a half wins. That seems about right. Their Zips projection was 61 wins. Um, what I'm really rooting for as a fan is 63 wins, because that puts us at 99 losses, avoiding 100 losses. That's about as ambitious and optimistic as you can get. I think 55 is about more accurate. Um, as far as players to keep an eye on, Luis Robert, he's at least had like an all-star, very good season in the past. Um, he's as close as you'll find to must-watch TV on this team, but that's really just because nobody else really comes close. He had a bad year last year. Everyone did, but 2023 was pretty good. 38 home runs, was at 857 OPS. So if he can play up to his potential, then he could be pretty solid, and then we would be looking to trade him. I mean, anybody on our team who plays well is really looking to build their trade value. There's a few young guys that, I mean, no one's untouchable, but even considering a decent farm system that we now have, I think it's like 6 top 100 prospects, 5, something like that. Um, the fans really don't have any faith in this current group of the front office and the ownership to, invest in the analytics and kind of modernize the team to the point where any good season will be anything other than, the randomness of baseball and getting lucky every few years. Jerry Reinsdorf, another thing that is more interesting than any on the field product for the White Sox this year is the transition of their ownership. From Jerry Reinsdorf, who's very old and he won't be around much longer. Um, Notoriously cheap owner, not liked by White Sox fans whatsoever. If he didn't luck his way into Michael Jordan winning the Bulls 6 rings in the 90s and the White Sox winning in 2005, he would have been gone long ago. But he's been able to kind of ride those teams to the very end, and it seems like what he plans on doing. Seems like is the guy who I don't know a ton about him. I know that he's got a brother who owns the Phoenix Suns, and he was trying to get into the Twins ownership, but I guess that didn't work out the way he wanted, so he's pivoted to the White Sox.
So actually, from what I've heard, this is all from like Dan Hayes, who reported this, and then the beat writer for the Athletic for the White Sox. I don't know his name. So Ishbia, a while, like 2 or 3 years ago, well, probably longer than that, bought a minority stake in the White Sox, and that was reported right when he was showing interest in the Twins. And when they talked to Reinsdorf earlier this year, like, hey, we would be interested in like buying the team, like eventually, like if he, because I think the Suns are planning on, like, Reinsdorf wants to sell the team when he dies, but he wants to pass the Bulls off to the Suns.
Right.
So Ishbia was like, well, I want to own. He's building like a multi-million-dollar complex in Chicago. He has a business in Chicago. He grew up in Detroit and would go to every season opener with his dad. And then, like you said, his brother owns. He and his brother co-own the Suns. So he gets interest. So Reinsdorf essentially tells him, "We're not interested in selling right now. We'll talk later," type thing. Well, the Twins then went up for sale in October, and Ishbia was like, "Well, if you're not selling, I'm just going to go buy the Twins." And then apparently the Twins were clearly chose Ishbia because like they kept saying that their timeline was they were going to announce a new owner by opening day, and the only name that they really talked about was Ishbia. About a month ago, less than, Ishbia, like Reinsdorf must have called the Ishbia brothers, like, well, if you can't buy the Twins, like, what's the matter with you? now we're open to eventually having you be the owner. So I think he's buying up more shares in the White Sox, and then eventually will just be the owner of the White Sox when Reinsdorf hands it off. So it's just a bit of a villain arc for Justin Ishbia in Minnesota, but I'm kind of happy for the White Sox because Reinsdorf is a terrible owner. It looks like Oren might have frozen here, so he'll bounce on in a bit. But I mean, not to discontinue the narrative too, but like Justin Ishbia, for people who, why people in Minnesota were getting so excited about him, was he, when his brother took over the Phoenix Suns, 3 days after they traded for Kevin Durant. They recently just lowered the concessions prices for Phoenix, and then they didn't like their TV deal, so they just decided that they would ship an antenna to anyone who emailed them, and they did it for like $5. Those who watched the last two episodes heard me go on a long rant over how the Twins couldn't be watched on TV, how much I hated the owners. So it really was like a really good solution. But seeing the White Sox were kind of a depressed asset. If you want to go with that, historically bad. They don't have a great stadium. I mean, if Ishbia can get a new stadium and buy the team, like the value of the White Sox will definitely surpass the value of the Twins. So he just has to wait a couple of years longer. So
Did any of you guys see that thing where there's a bill in the Illinois state legislature right now that says that if a team wants a new stadium, they have to have a winning season 3 out of the past
oh,
5 years in order to ask for tax dollars for a new stadium?
that's great.
That's
And
wild.
I think they called it like the what was it called? I'll tell you what it was called, and then you'll maybe figure out. Um, it's called the Balanced Earning and Record Statistics Act, which, if you're keeping score at home, is the Bears Act.
Funny.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, so I cut out. I don't know. Did it freeze for me?
You did, yeah.
You were
Did
frozen.
I have a good pose at least?
It wasn't bad.
Well, you were saying about how you were in the middle of talking about how Justin Ishbia got involved with the White Sox. If maybe we have to cut some of that out. If not, whatever.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I'm lazy.
But either way, that's one of the things we'll be watching this year is how the ownership gets transitions to the next regime. As far as players go, I mentioned Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn. Him being second on this list really goes to show how little there is to watch from that group. But he was a first round pick, and he's been about average, an average hitter, poor defender. Um, so this is about the year where you give a guys a few years of development. Not everyone's Mike Trout or Bryce Harper. Prospects sometimes they take a while for everything to click, but he's about at the end of his rope as far as determining who he is as a player. It seems like this is who he is, but as far as someone that just based on his age and his prospect pedigree, he's someone to watch. Jonathan Cannon from the pitching side. I mean, I saw Zips projected. We don't have one pitcher who's projected to be above league average in ERA. So, I mean, the only reason he's someone to watch is because he's a prospect and he'll be on the major league team. Otherwise, not much to say about him. Lenine Sosa, he's homegrown. He's a middle infielder. He has not had any good seasons, but he's had flashes that are the reason he's has a job these days. So he does some things well, does a lot of things poorly, but there's a lot of if this guy can suddenly become a good player, then he'd be a good player. Yeah, I mean, that's true of everyone. So bottom line, and then just Sean Burke because he's got the opening day nod for starting pitcher, and he's something like the fewest games pitched for opening day starter. So I don't know, watch him for at least one day. Could be a cool storyline. Most of the players that are exciting to some degree are going to be in the minor leagues. So guys like Kyle Teal, a catching prospect we got from Boston, Edgar Quiero, a catching prospect we got from Houston, I believe. There's two Montgomerys, Colson, a shortstop, and Braden, a corner outfielder. Um, Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith are some good-looking pitchers. Yeah, and then it kind of falls off after that. So it's not a terrible farm system right now. I imagine most experts would put it around slightly above average. But any team that's bad enough for a few years gets into that place. That being said, it's not a super exciting group. The last time we had a good farm system, that was like a very exciting. Like we thought, Yohan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert. We thought, man, there's potential for all of these guys to be like MVP level, and none of them were. So, it's hard to get excited about prospects after just being burned like that. But again, that's what the on-field players to watch. Really, like I said, the developments the Sox fans are going to keep their eye on are the change in ownership. There's a new ballpark that might be tied into that people have been talking about. Around the 2029-ish when the lease on the current stadium runs up. So there's stuff to hope for, but it's not. It's peripherally related to baseball. It's not on the field stuff. But in that vein, we're getting a new City Connect. And if it's the one that leaked, it's all right. It's fine. It looks like the 1983 jerseys, but it's in black and white and gray. So, the first round of our City Connects were decently popular with the fan base. These ones look all right too. I have a feeling they're going to put black pants with them, which I hate. I just, you look like ballerinas wearing black pants out there, but whatever. And the sleeve advertisement. One thing the White Sox are leading the league in is taking the longest amount of time before we put a stupid effing advertisement on their sleeves. So if there's anywhere they deserve credit, it's there. And I don't know why it's taken them so long. It's not because Reinsdorf wouldn't step over his mother for a nickel. It must just be that no one's made the right offer. I don't know. So that's something that we'll see is, when are we going to get the patch this year?
What's the advertisement?
They don't have one yet.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how many other teams don't have one yet. I thought the Yankees were going to just not do it at all. I thought like, okay, this is their chance to be the Yankees and be like, we don't put ads on our team, but they got Clark Insurance or something pretty quick. So, and once
Don't they also have a Nike thing or something? I guess that's something.
That's just the jersey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was when they to start this process a few years ago when they switched from Majestic to Nike, the manufacturer's logo, which that's different than an ad. That's whatever. That went from the sleeve to the chest, which some people were annoyed about. But honestly, I'm one of those guys that likes the Nike iconography. I grew up with it, Air Jordan, all that stuff. So it's like, I don't think that makes the jerseys look too bad. But the sleeve ads, some of them are all right insofar as they're not so noticeable, but some of them are just so ugly that it's like, my God. And, ads in general are never, people don't love ads. People aren't clamoring for a new ad. If they do one, hopefully it could be something that ties into the city. If they did like Vienna beef or something, so they could have a Chicago hot dog on the sleeve patch, that could almost be kind of cool. But, keyword almost, kinda, and if. So it's probably just going to be some terrible, ugly thing. But we'll see if that happens this year or next year. Let's hope that you can hold off. Outside of that, new manager, Will Venable. He was widely seen as a pretty good managerial choice after we've made some bad ones in the past few years. We'll see how it actually plays out. I liked Grady Sizemore last year. Great vibes guy, super handsome. He used to have his own cheering section of beautiful women in Cleveland. So if you can get a cheering section of beautiful women in Cleveland, you must be, doing a lot of things right. So I like.
There's only like four beautiful women in Cleveland, right? Like,
No, I joke, but he. I'm glad he'll still be on the coaching staff, but his time as interim manager, even though they looked a little bit better than they did under Pedro Grifol, there's still, you can't take the at bats for him, so the ceiling's only so high. Let's say my prediction for the division is I have Detroit going 93-69, taking the division. I
Wow.
just think their youth and their versatility, um, plus AJ Hinch, I hate that Astros team, but he knows what he's doing. I think that they can build on last year's surprising success. I have Cleveland in second place at 88-74, Minnesota in third place at 87-75, Kansas City I have at 81-81. Unfortunately, someone's got to regress. Um, I think the stars aligned a little bit too much for them, and I don't know if we're going to get 5 wins out of Seth Lugo and 9 wins out of uh, Bobby Witt, even though he is, a top 5 player in baseball, maybe top 3 at this point. He's ridiculous, but someone had to regress, so I think it's going to be the Royals, and I have the White Sox at 56-106. Like I said, I'm hoping for 63 wins to keep us under 100 losses. Um, that's still marked. That would, if 56 wins would be a 15-win improvement, but when you start at 41 wins, that's not saying much. And that is the reason why my season preview is shorter than the other ones. There's just not much to talk about there. I think I covered it. I might have forgotten something that, that could be interesting development, but for the most part, our relevance will be in um, how we, just if we disrupt any other teams in the Central. I want my instinct is to say whoever does the worst against the White Sox is going to be the team that that's going to be where the other team in the division that gets disappointed will come from. But last year that was kind of not true because the Cleveland was worst against them, and Cleveland finished on top of everyone. Um, but that's something as far as you guys are concerned, it's free wins against the White Sox. So don't screw it up. You could be beating yourself up at the end of the season, saying, "Man, we're one game we missed the playoffs by, and we somehow went 5-5 against the White Sox."
Mhm.
Um, but that's about what our 2025 looks like.
So I've got one comment, one question. I just texted my auntie, who's a big White Sox fan, and I said, "So who's your favorite White Sox player now?" And she responded, "I have no idea who is on the team." So that's the current status of things. Also, so how do you feel about the Garrett Crochet trade? Like, do you think you got a good return out of that?
I mean, he looked like a really good pitcher. I know he doesn't have a ton of sample size to pull from, but just based on the eye test and the results he was getting last year, he looked really legit. So I think trading him was the right move. I mean, we're at the point where you trade anything of value. I know it sucks. We just went through a rebuild and no one wants to do it again, but there's no point in hanging on to these guys. There's no point in even fantasizing about signing the big top free agents of the world because they would just be counterproductive at this point. It's really just, a waiting game of the next couple years, seeing if any of these young players stick, seeing what happens with the Jerry Reinsdorf's health, stuff like that. So, um, for the foreseeable future, it's a lot of guys that no one's ever heard of. So I think a lot of people are in the same boat as your aunt. I mean, I had to look up. I'm still being surprised by guys that I'm on the team. Like who? Every other person. So
What
Do
would
you,
be your what would be your ideal scenario for the White Sox new stadium? Do you think they need a new stadium? And I know there's been a couple of renderings of potential things for a new White Sox stadium, but what would your opinion on that be?
they absolutely do not need a new stadium. They want one. It would be nice if you can get like the taxpayers to pay for it. I know I was frozen out of this part earlier, but Jerry loves seeing if the taxpayers will cover the bill before he does. And if they don't, he's shown in the past that he paid a substantial amount of his own money to build the United Center where the Bulls and the Blackhawks play in the mid 90s. So, I mean, there is some precedent there, but he's definitely going to check with the state first and see how much money he can get. who knows? It could be posturing. It could be, just a move to try to leverage their next stadium lease. So, it's nothing too solid now. And at earliest, it would be, still 5 years away ish. But the renderings have looked cool, and Chicago has a beautiful skyline, and if they could find a way to integrate that into a view, that would be awesome. Who doesn't want a shiny new stadium? But they definitely don't need one. Guarantee or rate field, as it's now called, Comiskey, Sox Park. It's very unspectacular. It was one of the last stadiums built before stadiums really started getting pretty. It was built in the late 80s, where, the functionality is good. There's not, the sight lines are good. But it was right before, the Camdens, the Coors Fields of the world started being built, and people started looking at baseball stadiums as something that you could really make as, a, a very pretty aesthetic for that. So we did get kind of screwed by the timing of it, but it's a fine place to watch a game. Um, it's easy to get to. It's on the red line. So no, they don't need a new stadium, but we want one.
Right.
Well, famously, anytime an owner wants to build a new stadium, it's so that they can have more luxury suites.
Yeah. Or even now, the model is I'm going to buy up the neighborhood around it, put up 10 restaurants,
Yeah,
and copy what the Braves did a decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, on the north side here, which is a lot closer to where I live than the Sox Park, I'm maybe 15-minute drive from Wrigley Field. Um, the Ricketts bought everything in that neighborhood, and the neighborhood completely changed in the last 10, 15 years, from being very divey but with a lot of kind of authenticity to being very kind of Disney-fied now. There's like luxury hotels next to the stadium. It's like that's not Wrigleyville. Wrigleyville is like drunk people getting in fist fights while everyone watches. It's not this like I get it. Every it's kind of the trend everywhere to become more family friendly and stuff like that. But the Ricketts definitely did that. They bought so much real estate and properties in Wrigleyville that they own half that town by now.
Or you could just do what the Illiches have done and buy up all the random lots around the stadium and not do shit with them.
Well, what I like about Detroit is I am thinking of Detroit, right? All the stadiums are pretty close to each other.
Yeah,
Basketball,
Comerica and
football.
Ford Field are right next to each other, and then Little Caesars Arena is like across the street, like down the block a little bit. They're all all right by each other.
And Minnesota's like that too, right?
Yeah, but they're downtown, so like Target Center's down the street, but it's all city skyline. It's not like out of the city.
Yeah, and Kansas City is kind of like off to the side, but they do have the baseball and football stadiums close, right?
yeah, they're right next to each other. Yeah,
Yeah,
share
and
the
then
parking lot.
Jacobs Field is pretty centrally located, so
You can throw a rock and hit what's now Rocket Arena where the Cavs play.
Yeah.
It's right
Yeah.
next door.
and those are
But-
downtown too, right?
Yes, and then there's a bit of a thing going on with the Browns right now where they're actually trying to move out of downtown Cleveland into a town called Brook Park, which is just southwest of the city. It's a whole thing, but they're in kind of a similar situation as Comiskey, where their stadium got built at an odd time in terms of the timeline of stadiums, and so
I think
they're-
it looks a little better than ours, though.
yeah, it's a little newer.
I
It's
think
not,
not that anyone asked, but I think the beauty of the AL Central stadiums is Twins, Royals, Guardians, Tigers, White Sox.
Yeah, they're all good parks. Like I like aesthetically, I think Kansas City, I think would be my favorite, like to pick. But like Target Field, like they've done a good job of updating it and like adding in new things. But that's even starting to be 10, 15 years old now. And then I like Comerica a lot too.
Comerica loves its tigers motif. There's a whole bunch of tiger statues all over the place. Though I am really annoyed. There's a picture they removed above the scoreboard. There's the tigers sign, and it has LEDs and lights and stuff. They took that down, and then now it just has Comerica Park on it.
That's
So-
lame.
Yeah, that's lame. I hope they're planning on putting it back, but it might just be gone, and they might just have Comerica Park on it. So that's lame.
Yeah, who knows? So I just have one final. You kind of already talked about it briefly, but Chris Getz, is that the GM now?
Yeah.
Do you trust him with this rebuild? Because this is the first non-Kenny Williams rebuild since like what, 2000?
Yeah. Um, so he hasn't really been around long enough to be certain that he's not good at his job. He hasn't done anything to show that he is going to be. It seems like I think Rick Hahn was a pretty good GM. He put together that team, and everyone was predicting they'd be good for a while. If you can get to that point as a GM, you've done your job. It obviously did not play out how he wanted, but I thought he made some great moves in building up to that core that fell flat, but they were projected to be really good. And as far as a GM, that's as much you could do. Getz he seems fine. He hasn't done anything to really piss anyone off yet. I mean, his trades haven't been spectacular. We definitely we haven't fleeced anyone. Some people would say we've gotten fleeced by the Padres for the Cease trade or the Red Sox for the Crochet trade, but it'll take a couple years before we can say definitively. But no one's really that excited about him. I liked him as a guy. I mean, I liked him as a player. He was on the Royals and the White Sox. He was a middle infielder. And he was really good friends with Gordon Beckham. So it was fun to watch them like kind of pal around back then. And now it's like, okay, he's our GM now. And he was formerly our head of player development.
Right.
But it's like, okay, well, we have the worst season ever. So you want to put the guy who was in charge of that, let's promote him. So a lot of people resent him just because he's the guy who's in the time and place of the worst team like ever. But I think so far it's 50% too early to tell, and 50%, he's fine, not great.
I
I
actually,
believe this may not be true, but I believe at one point Chris Getz had the Royals record for consecutive plate appearances without a home run.
Huh.
What was it?
That's impressive.
Do you remember what it was?
I think it was like I don't remember, but it was quite a few.
Fair enough.
I think it was in like the well, I can tell you that it was at least 887 plate appearances.
Wow.
About two
Without a home
full
run.
seasons. Honestly, I'm
So,
surprised that's the longest. They've been around long enough that I think they'd have some like 0 home run shortstop for a few years at some point.
Well, especially
yeah,
during
I'm not
the era.
100%. I remember hearing that stat years ago, but that may not be true. So
Lots of players end up like fluking. You hit one ball like with the wind behind you, and then it just drifts into the right spot in left field or something. So
I remember like 2011, 2012, Justin Morneau had a streak like 2 months where he didn't hit a home run and nobody could figure out why. He was healthy, he was fine. It was just before the concussion kind of sidetracked his career, but yeah, just random power outage for him.
Yeah, it happens.
it's so bizarre with Morneau, though, based on his archetype, who he was.
Right.
I did have a couple quick things I wanted to ask. Well, first of all, a statement. So, White Sox won 41 games last year. Oren's suggesting they win 56. That means somebody's going to have to lose 15 more games, guys.
Yep.
That could be any of us.
Most likely any of us.
I hope it's not, but we've got that going against us, unfortunately. But on the opposite side of that, Eric Fetty, Garrett Crochet were on the team last year, if I'm not mistaken. Was Fetty traded midway through?
Yes, he went to St. Louis in a 3-team trade, sent Tommy Edman to LA, and we got Miguel Vargas, who I didn't even mention as a player to watch because I didn't think he was worthy. He's about tied with Lenine Sosa as far as who they are as a player,
I just remember seeing the pictures of him in the dugout looking very depressed to be at the White Sox.
Yeah, that must be fun going from the Dodgers to the White Sox.
So I'm not going to try to make an argument that the White Sox are going to win 41 games again, but definitely their worst best 2 pitchers from last year are gone, and so it's going to be interesting to see how they get there. Again, I'm not going to try to make an argument against that.
No, I mean
It's hard to win 41 games.
Like I said, I think that it's about a wash talent-wise, maybe a little bit of a step down because we have traded away guys like Crochet and Fetty. We signed other guys with to be. I mean, we knew last year that the Fetty was only there to build his value before the trade deadline, and we signed a few guys like that this year. Um, unless you know, it was Michael A. Taylor, Brandon Drury, Martin Perez.
Joey
Joe
Gallo.
Gallo's already released and apparently switched pitching. So, there's some guys, but I think if you take a 55 win team and give them any amount of variance, it's within the realm of possibility that they could only win, 40 games. And this might not even be a 55 win team. It might be a 45 win team, in which case, the floor is, we might even beat our own record. But I think it would be surprising. I think there's a reason that all of the worst teams in history bottom out at about that winning percentage, because if you take a AAA team, that's about, I think, what you'd get out of them if they played a full major league season, and just enough guys can have a good day of pitching that it's hard to imagine going below 40. But if we repeat the record, no one would exactly be surprised.
Right. Well,
yeah, did you guys also just get really unlucky? Because I remember seeing some stuff where there was just a bunch of things. It's like, how did they lose this game?
Yeah, it was about 10 games worth of bad luck, which is,
go.
I believe, more than anyone. If it was, it's been a while since I've seen the source from there was a graphic of each team's luck factor, and they were in 30th place at about 10 extra losses. So if you say they had neutral luck, that they become a 51 win team, which is, very bad, but not exciting bad. And if they had 10 wins of luck in the good direction, they could have been a 61 win team, which again is still pretty bad. But at a certain point, and I know that each and every one of us knows this, when you have a bad team, it kind of plateaus at a certain point. The difference between 60 and 40 wins, you don't really care. The difference between 80 and 100 is huge. It means the world. But once you get this far down in the basement, it's all just kind of, a loss fest no matter what.
Hey, but you guys have fun stadium food. So there's that.
We have fun stadium food. I mean, I went to one game last year. I don't know if I'm going to go to any games this year. I went to a bunch of Cubs games just because I'm closer and I've got a friend with season tickets. But, yeah, I don't feel bad about it. I mean, I'm paying them $25 a month for this stupid new streaming service because I guess normal TV isn't good enough anymore. So, I'm not a huge boycott or try to, vote with my wallet guy, but this is one of those chances where I'm like, no, man, screw Jerry Reinsdorf. I don't even want to go,
I think the biggest thing is that in the American League right now, there's more teams than just the White Sox who are going to be beat up on. I think the Angels are quite bad. The A's are pretty bad. I think the Rays are probably going to have playing in that spring training stadium are probably going to have a down year to say the least. But I think the American League in general is definitely the weaker of the two leagues right now.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
I had just one other comment off of this. I was perusing some stuff today just to get prepared. Is Mike Clevenger really slated as the closer of the White Sox this year? I hadn't seen his transition to the bullpen as.
No, he's not. He's not on the team anymore, right? Unless they re-signed him again, because in 2023 they signed him and he was actually kind of good, even though people didn't like his character. He was decent in 2023. They brought him back after the season started last year, and then I think either traded or released.
He pitched on Friday for the White
Really?
Sox. Clevenger did. Yeah.
That is a surprise to me. Like I said, I'm still finding out who's on this team.
According to Wikipedia, he re-signed on February 20th this year. So
okay, well, I must have been busy.
5 innings, no earned runs so far in spring training. So
watch out for the rest of the AL.
Watch this space, Mike Clevenger.
I'm going to keep keeping an eye on that. That's interesting. He's got the stuff to do that, having a history with him. It's just can he stay
Yeah,
healthy?
we also have Karen check now,
Clubhouse.
so we're really going through the ex Indians pitchers to see if they have anything left in the tank.
Well, unless that stuff left in the tank is sticky stuff, I don't think Karinchak has a chance.
No, he's a head case to begin with, so I don't think people are really rooting for him. But it's a name that I know, and that's saying a lot these days.
Right. All right. Well, I think you thought that would be 15 minutes. Look at you. We filled much more than 15 minutes on the White Sox. Look at us go.
There we go. There's some stuff to talk about, I
I
guess.
will say, not all of that was between the lines discussion on what's going to happen with the White Sox this year.
We've been too nice with these season previews. Everyone believes their team is the best. I'm here to put a stamp on it. I will say right here that I think the Twins, on paper, are a clear step above everyone else in the division.
Mm.
So, just one step, one clear step. I'm not going crazy. This is still a flawed team, and this is probably a 90 to 92 win team. I'm not trying to say pull out the World Series parade or anything like that, but I'm going to go through the roster, and then I have a couple things that will hopefully back me up, and then you guys can pull this clip the rest of the season when they inevitably tank, and we'll go from there. So
Yeah. To be fair, I think everyone except Orin is putting their team as I think we're going to win the division, and so only one is going to be correct.
yep, and it's going to be great seeing who it is, and so I also I know the Twins. The worry is last year they had a historically bad collapse. They had a 90% chance to go in the playoffs going into the second or third week of August, and then forgot how to play baseball. And on the last day of the season, they missed the playoffs. So, in the year where three AL Central teams got in the playoffs, the Twins were left out with the literal worst team in baseball history as the only other non AL Central team. So, yes, that does hurt. Before that collapse, I'm not going to forget that they had that 3 month stretch in between the best record in baseball. Now, yes, they were playing the Central, they had a weaker schedule, all of that stuff. But this team was very good for most of the season. And then they just ran out of gas, which is in itself its own worry. So with that, I have my proof. So I'm gonna start with probably the biggest question mark for the Twins. As soon as I can pull it up.
Does it start with B?
It doesn't. So I'm
Oh,
going to start with the lineup. So I'm going to go position by position to kind of give everyone just like a really brief synopsis. I'm not going to jump on. I'm just putting up the sliders for anyone who's listening to this audibly of their baseball savant page, so you guys kind of have an idea of what kind of player they are. So for catcher, for a team that has been rattled with injuries the last, I don't know, my entire lifetime, catcher for the Twins the last 2 or 3 years has been remarkably healthy. Vasquez and Jeffers have caught, I think, all but 2 games in the last 2 years, and poor Jair Camargo has been sitting at AAA just begging for a chance, and he can't break the lineup. Vasquez is in the final year of a 3-year, $30 million deal, and he has not exactly lived up to the contract. He is a he used to be a good hitting catcher, like 190 to 100 OPS guy, and his bat has absolutely cratered. Pitchers still love throwing to him, apparently, so that's all he has to live up on. He is a decent framer. He's obviously a good defensive catcher. Ryan Jeffers has been very hit or miss. He's in I think his second year of arbitration or first year of arbitration. It's kind of debatable if the Twins will pick up his option next year. Obviously, this year might decide that as well. Jeffers, if you look at his sliders, at no point was he really this type of player. In the first 2 months, I think he hit 15 home runs. He had like an 850 OPS, and then he just kind of stopped hitting. He was hitting closer to Vasquez. So if you look at his season total, he had put up like a 2 WAR season. After March or April and May, he was pretty bad behind the plate. Which for catcher you can kind of take. He is a decent defensive catcher, but they do split time more than probably most players in the league. Out of 10 games, Jeffers probably going to catch 6 of those games. Like it is pretty much a timeshare. At first base, oh, this isn't pretty. So at the start of the offseason, or at the start of spring training, this looked like it was Jose Miranda's job. Up until about a month before, they signed Ty France to a minor league deal, and almost immediately they thought that Bracco Baldelli came out, their manager came out and said, well, Ty's going to play every day. Anyone who's looking at the screen right now is wondering, why is Ty France getting all of these at-bats? He used to be 2 or 3 years ago an all-star caliber player. He used to play in the outfield. Hasn't been a great defender, even though this year Rocco Baldelli and the infielding staff is saying he's a very good defensive first baseman. They said the same thing about Carlos Santana last year, and he won a Gold Glove. The year before that, they had Joey Gallo do it, and he was a good defender, and they're saying he's on par with both of them. We'll see if they're able to do it for him. That's great, but he's never really been known for his glove ever. He is a first base, so they're going to stick him at first base. He's not a typical first baseman in that he's not going to hit you 30 home runs. He's going to hit doubles, he's going to hit 15 to 20 home runs, and he's not going to strike out an awful lot. Last year, though, he cratered. They point to an ankle injury that he came back too late from, and that's where really his defensive metrics really took a slip, and that's where like his offense never kept up. He is having a tremendous spring, but I'm not exactly sold on Ty France. The reason Ty France is even on the team is Jose Miranda used to be one of their top prospects. Honestly, I'm not a huge Jose Miranda fan. He really had one really good year at AAA. He won their minor league player of the year and has been very streaky. Some of it's injuries because that's everyone else on the Twins. But he's just not consistent. He has the ability to make contact with everything. But most of that contact is either a slow roller to second or a slightly harder ball to third. Either way, they're ground ball double plays. He's not that fast. He doesn't have great defense. And he's moving over to first base from third base. Now we'll talk about with Royce Lewis, but he's also going to play some third base as well. But he kind of needs to prove it this year outside of who has been kind of lackluster. But we'll see. Second base, another big question mark. So you have Brooks Lee. Brooks Lee was drafted 3 years ago. He is a coach's kid, literally played college ball with his dad. Switch hitter, was one of their top prospects, actually topped out at 18 when he was on prospect lists. Should be a kind of like a Ty France type. He's going to be hit doubles. He's not that fast. We'll see. Last year he came up. He might have been a little rushed. He did have a back injury to start half of the season, but he didn't look that great when he was coming in, like going out through the season. His other competition for second base was Edouard Julien, who is a French Canadian who only spoke English until he went to college in Auburn, where then he learned English. So it is kind of funny that someone who is French Canadian learned English in Alabama. I don't know how he did it. I would like to think he has a southern accent with also a French Canadian tinge, but he kind of came out of nowhere. I believe he was drafted in the second or third round. Oh no, he's actually, I can see it here. He was drafted in round 18 in 2019. He is incredibly patient. And by patient, he doesn't swing at balls outside the zone. So that used to be a pro, and that still is a pro for him, but you don't know if he's too passive. The amount of times he will strike out looking is infuriating. When he does make contact, though, it is a home run. He is a three true outcomes type player. He doesn't have a lot of swing and he does have a lot of swing and miss. He will draw 100 walks that he did in the minor leagues. Now it's just pitchers kind of know that, so now they'll just groove him a fastball near the edge, and he just won't swing at it. It also didn't help that he came in like with the ABS system in the minor league, so we got used to a smaller zone to where when he got into the majors, they were calling pitches that he didn't believe were strikes when most of them weren't, but he needed to learn to swing anyway. So if he can make that adjustment, he's only been playing baseball for like 8 years. Like it's not like he came highly touted to Auburn. He basically learned on the fly. So there might be some development for him, but we'll see. He is now in his third year. We'll see what you can get out of him. Really, between Brooks Lee, Edward Julian, and Jose Miranda, if any of them can live up to any amount of potential, that's going to be huge for them this year. Those are really the big question marks as far as like young players who need to take a step forward. Oh, let's talk about Royce Lewis now. So Royce, if you're looking at the screen, did not have a great 2024.
Real quick, not to interrupt you, it really sounded like you were talking directly to Royce Lewis right there.
Royce, if you are listening,
Oh, Royce, come on, take a look at this here, buddy.
Just, what happened?
hey, he might listen.
Let's hope. Oh, also, what's funny about Rice? He is apparently like the happiest, go luckiest person ever. To where he just got injured. I forget what the injury is. He's going to be out for the first month of the season. He was even telling reporters like, "Well, they haven't ruled me out for opening day yet," and everyone was like, "Yeah, but like you're still going to be out for a month, so like maybe don't tell people that."
He's the first casualty of Twins getting injured to put on the
Yes.
scoreboard.
Of the
Injuries 1, Minnesota 0. So
Yeah, that scoreboard is always going to tilt in favor of injuries. I've learned. So with Royce, he he was a top 100 prospect. Used to be like a super athlete. Like his sprint speed, if you look, is that 28th percentile. That used to be like Buxton level, 98, 99 when he's in the minors. That was 2 ACL tears ago. He then has had just a lot of like soft tissue injuries. Whether that is him adjusting to his ACL and he's trying to like run as fast as he used to and his body can't and that ends up pulling something. But his injuries have been, other than he crashed into the wall playing center filling in for Buxton, it's been pulling an oblique, a hamstring, like you said, just all these soft tissue issues. When he has come back from those, he was Superman. And I mean, like, he's putting up 900 to 1,000 OPS for a month after he comes off the injured list. He has been phenomenal, like, immediately after coming off the injured list. What was different about last year, he came in, hit a home run in the first game, I think hit the single, and then as he was rounding going from first to third, he injured himself. He was out for 2 months. When he came back, he was again phenomenal for a month. And then he was healthy, but not productive, which is the first time that has happened. So is that the league adjusting to him? Is that him just being mortal? Who knows? So he does have some question marks, but I'm not as worried about Royce because as far as like what his production is, because eventually he can't just be a 900 OPS guy, or else he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And you know, as much as I would love to pretend that is going to be the case with a guy, we'll see.
his break chart is very funny. I don't know. There's like this huge gap in between all of his singles and doubles.
Yep.
So
Well, he's also like he used to be more of a line drive hitter, and because of his ACLs, like he's put on more muscle, so now he can just hit bombs, and I think he's trying to like figure out that like he has a new power, like superpower that he can hit it. So, I mean, he's just been in transition. He's just not the prospect people envisioned when he was drafted.
Just as an aside, do you know how Savant calculates sprint speed? Is it at their peak or is it like an average or something?
So they have something called bolts, and bolts is when you are like dead running for first. So like your absolute top speed. I think you have to have X amount of bolts, and then they calculate that average. So like if you're running hard to first to third or first to second, like they'll take your top speed off of that and then average it out. But yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't, coming back from two ACL things. If he was purposely like not sprinting at 100% speed, maybe just going at like 80% because he
they've
could
told
stay
him
on the
that.
field.
So in the playoff game where he hit a home run, the game where I cried, they basically told him, "You're the DH. Do not run. You are here to hit a home run. Like I don't care if you hit a ball into the gap. It's a single. You're not running at all." The problem is he's one of those hustle players. Like you can't take that out of him. So actually, it was kind of funny last year. He had a game where I think he hit like 2 home runs in a game, or he had like 4 home runs in 5 games or something. And it was a streak long enough where the reporters were waiting to interview him, and they had to delay, or he was delayed because MLB was testing him for like the third time that month. And he came back and they said, "Well, I don't know why they're." Royce comes into the interview room and is like, "Well, I don't know why they're testing me. The only thing they're going to find in these veins is ice cream." Like, which is a great line. And then he went into a slump shortly after that. So
It sounds like he's kind of relearning his identity as a ball player.
yes,
He's, as you were saying, he's hitting more home runs now, as fewer doubles. Sprint speed, he's still fast, but not the effortlessly fast
yeah.
that he once was. But I know he's going to play third. You mentioned he had been filling in for Buxton in center. I don't know if he was what originally he was kind of projected to be, but it just sounds like relearning on the fly who he is.
Well, so he was drafted and came up as a shortstop. So the year that Correa signed with the Twins the first time, that 1 year deal when he was coming off of the Astros, actually it was funny because he actually picked number 4 that spring, and then the Twins signed him Correa that spring, and Correa picked number 4. So then Lewis changed to 23. Little side story. Yeah, he came up as a shortstop, but it was kind of debatable if he was going to be a shortstop or like if he was going to move positions. Once Correa was signed, well, then it was a no-brainer that, especially the second deal where Correa could be there for next 10 years. So then the thought was, well, could he still be center field? Because at that point he only had one ACL tear. Buxton went on the IL. I think it was either the first or the second game. Lewis was in center, crashed into the wall, and that's when he retore his ACL. And if you, it was a hard hit. I think you can Google it or YouTube it and find it there. But yeah, he's just had tremendously hard luck with injuries, and it seems like for someone who's so happy and go lucky, and like he came back after as soon as he tore his second ACL, he came back to the beat reporters like, "Well, I've done this before. Like, I'm ready to do it again. Like, this is less scary than the last time." Like, he's just very upbeat and like someone you want to cheer for, and his body is just failing him.
So has he torn the same ACL or different
Yes,
one?
it was the same ACL.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure Twins fans are extra sensitive to that career trajectory after 7 or 8 or however many years of Byron Buxton.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, too, like Twins have not, even going back 20 years, like Mauer tore his knee like his first week in the majors. Morneau got sidelines with concussion. Jason Kubel, if you remember him, he used to be not a super prospect, but he blew up his knee. Like they have not had a major prospect reach the majors unscathed. And even last year, if you guys remember Alex Kirilloff had to retire last year because he has a serious back injury.
He retired.
He retired because of injury, and he
Damn.
was like a top 100 prospect. Like he hurt his wrist, came back healthy, looked phenomenal for like 2 months at a time, and then would just get healthy, and then eventually the back just gave out on him. So like they have unbelievably bad luck over 20 years with top prospects, or at least I think so. I haven't watched the other teams, but yeah, it's been a hard road. But we'll see. So Royce is out for a month. We'll go from there. Next up, Carlos Correa. I don't have.
Boo.
Yeah, there it is. Correa has been phenomenal while on the field. This is last year. He's just a smart, great player. He's short, he's slow for a shortstop, but he has a cannon for an arm, makes up for it, and his baseball IQ is off of the charts. Um, Not much to really say. He has been taken out, so he got signed to the Twins twice. One because the lockout. The second time was both the Giants and the Mets gave him north of $350 million, and because of his medicals for a ankle injury when he was in rookie ball, he has a steel plate in his ankle. They were offering him 10-year deals. They thought that wouldn't age particularly well if they pulled their deals. That's why the Twins were able to get him for 6 years and $200 million, which is great. Except for now, the last 2 seasons, he's had plantar fasciitis in both feet. One 2 years ago, and then he got the other foot the other last year. It sucks, but with plantar fasciitis, there's really nothing you can do about it other than stay off it, and then it just goes away. It's not like a hamstring where you can picture like it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. It just, you stay off it and hope you don't re-aggravate it, and then eventually it just goes away without like really any warning. We'll see what happens with that. He is 30, so his years of being a productive shortstop might be coming to an end within the next 2 or 3 years. But for right now, I'm not worried about Carlos Correa. The corners: Trevor Larnach, Matt Wallner. I think these sliders would surprise most people. Trevor Larnach has been around for a couple of years. He's just a big, lugging left fielder. Last year, he cut a strikeout rate, and something just seemed to click with him to the point where they were having him bat second in front of Correa. We'll see if he can keep it up, but he's just gap to gap power. Has the like once in a while he'll hit like a 450-foot bomb. We'll see with him. Not much to talk on him. The person you might want to watch out for is Matt Wallner, and like except for a 25 gap 25 plate appearances to start the year last year, he has been phenomenal in right field or in right or left field. He just hits the snot out of the ball when he connects. I don't want to say he's like a Joey Gallo because he doesn't have the patience, or like he has definitely more contact than him, but he's more of a three true outcomes player than he is anything. It's just when he hits the ball, it's X's below. Like what was it last year was 92, which is really great. His arm strength is like again, it says 99th percentile there. He can jump people down. Like it's fun to watch when he does it. So if he continues to develop the way he has, and he definitely is the type of player that you would expect maybe some regression, especially if they're that power heavy and there's that much swing and miss. He can always regress, but when given chances, he's done it. And now the most tragic player on the Twins, Byron Buxton, who has probably been my favorite Twin for a decade because he is incredibly fun to watch, but it's no secret he just can't stay on the field. If you're looking at a spray chart, look at his doubles. It is all down the line here, like down the line, all home runs. He's definitely a pull hitter. And even with all of the injuries he's had, and he's 31 years old, he is still 97th percentile sprint speed. When he's on the field, I think he was a couple of years ago. I'll go back to 2021. He was putting up numbers that were beating Trout and Otani. He was legitimately a top five player in the world. And other than he had a slow start last year, he has been nothing but great since then, since 2021. With that said, he is very streaky, and it's no secret that he really struggles to stay on the field to the point where the Twins have to come up with good backup plans. 3 years ago, it was Michael A. Taylor, who had a really good year then. Last year, they tried it again with Manuel Margot. That went horribly. And this year, they're trying it with Harrison Bader. So their strategy with Buxton, they know he's going to miss time. Nobody's under the illusion he's going to play 140 games. But he is going to, like, he's going to DH. They're going to try to keep him healthy. If he can play 120 games, that's the goal with Buxton. So the two backup roles, you're gonna have Harrison Bader, Willie Castro. Willie Castro, minor league signing from the Tigers, and he was their all-star representative last year. He plays 5 different positions. I think he even set a record because he played 20 games in both center, left field, shortstop, third base, and second base last year, which apparently no one has done before. He absolutely saved them when they weren't completely collapsing in the last season or in the season. Then Harrison Bader, who is a very light hitting center fielder who is just really great in the field. So see him in left and right when he's not subbing out for Buxton. We'll see what happens with him. Then just a quick next up. This is what kind of gives me hope. So the lineup should be about 5 deep if you count Correa, Buxton, Wallner, Larnick, and potentially Royce Lewis when he comes back. What gives me hope outside of that is you have Walker Jenkins, and I'll be honest, Walker Jenkins probably isn't debuting this year, but he is a consensus top 10 prospect right now, just kind of a super freak of an athlete. Who you will see more than likely is Emmanuel Rodriguez, who is a top 25, 50 global prospect. He kind of profiles like a Wallner, but he's more athletic. He runs well, he has a lot of power. He's also incredibly patient. He's probably going to settle in a corner spot in the outfield, but right now he's fast enough to play in center and at least supposedly be decent at it. But we'll see. He grades as a 55 overall prospect, which, if I remember the prospect grades, 50 on a 20 to 80 scale. 50 is a regular starter, good, decent starter. 55 to 60 is more of an all star, and he grades out at 55. For the infield, you have Luke Keeschel, who just kind of plays everywhere. He's a line drive hitter, sprays the ball around. You could see him as well. He had a monster year last year in the minors, so that is their depth for when the Twins inevitably do have injuries. So that was the question mark. Who is concerned
Yeah.
about the Twins lineup? Anyone?
That was very thorough.
Thank you.
Was that,
Now,
so did that cover all 9 positions?
yeah, that was all in the bench.
Just not pitching yet, right?
No, but that is where I think the Twins are better. Like that is the pitching staff should be the strength of the team.
That I want to hear. This is interesting to me.
So the big three, and when I say big three, like let's tamper our expectations here. The Twins have 3 very good number 2 fringe number 1 starters. Pablo Lopez has the ability to be the best out of all 3 of them. He's an incredibly smart. His stuff is good. He signed a long contract with them a couple years ago. But Pablo, he has the bit like his ceiling is just higher. So a couple years ago in the playoffs, he shut down Houston. He shut down the Blue Jays. Like if there's one player that if you need someone to shut out a team, it's Pablo. Bailey, Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober are kind of been linked together. They got Joe Ryan in the Nelson Cruz trade with the Rays, which is a rare occasion where the Rays got fleeced because Nelson Cruz played half a season for the Rays and wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great either. Joe Ryan is he used to be basically a fastball pitcher, but he was only throwing 91, 92. Now he is throwing 94, 95. The Twins have had a good stretch of being able to find players and add 2 or 3 miles an hour of velocity, which is Dan. You probably know this. Derek Falvey used to be in Cleveland, and that used to be their secret sauce too. That's why they had so many players just come up for Cleveland. It seems like Cleveland could just spit out a mid rotation starter. That's now starting to happen in Minnesota. Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober are the 2 best examples they have right now, at least for a starting position. Joe Ryan now throws a really good sinker or a splitter, and he just keeps getting better. Like I said, he's added 3 miles an hour onto his velocity the last couple of years. And then there's Bailey Ober. Bailey Ober is a 6'9". He only throws 92, but when he was in college, he was throwing 87, 88. His fastball is a little bit more deceptive because he's 6'9". His extension but where he releases the ball, it's almost like the perceived velocity is like up to 95, 96. He also just has really good control. He's never been like a prospect that people were like all that impressed with, but he has just overachieved expectations every year. So with these three, if these three are healthy, they have a really good chance. I wouldn't say they would be a favorite for like a first game in a playoff game, like a game one of a playoff series. They probably would be slight underdogs, but they'd probably be for a second and third game two and game three. They might be like Ryan and Ober are as good as anyone else you'll see. The rest of the rotation, this is where it kind of gets a little bit messy. Chris Paddock and Simeon Woods Richardson. Chris Paddock has been pretty inconsistent. He's been injured a lot, two Tommy John surgeries. They got him for Taylor Rogers a couple years back in a trade that also had Brent Rooker in it. So I'm going to forget that Brent Rooker was ever a Twin because, boy, that looks bad right now. But Paddock's been injured. He's very inconsistent. He can either shut down a team or he's going to give up 5 runs. Likely, he's not going to be brought back next year. He's owed $7 million this year, and then he's a free agent. I'm not a huge believer in it. Simeon Woods Richardson was part of the Jose Barrios trade a couple years ago. He didn't come out of nowhere, but his prospect stock was really on the decline the last couple of years. Except for last year, they changed his arm angle, and he went from throwing 89, 90 to now he was throwing 93, 94, which is just enough for him to get by. He does throw 5 or 6 pitches, but he does seem kind of like an overachiever. This might be as good as he's going to be, which honestly, if he's a number 4, number 5 starter, that's a really good number 4 or number 5. If he can make a jump up, that would be great, but I don't know if he has it in the tank. But that's okay because the two guys on the left, their pages don't look that great. David Festa and Zebby Matthews, um, they're both rookies. They're both really good pitching prospects. They were also added a couple miles an hour of velocity when the Twins drafted them. The Twins will go into these small colleges, Charleston for Ober, Seton Hall, which isn't exactly that small for Festa, and then Western Carolina for Zebby Matthews. And same thing. They're throwing 90. By the time they get to the majors, they're throwing 95. Festa does throw around 94, 95, tops out at 97. The player to really be excited about is Zebby Matthews, and that screen does not show it. So Zebby last year was in high A in like April. He was in the majors by August.
Wow.
He was someone who came in throwing 92 last at the end of last year, 94, 95. Right now he is working at 96 and topping out at 97. He keeps adding velocity and he's a control artist. He does not throw a ball, which is kind of why he got lit up last year because hitters figured out he's going to throw something in the zone, so you can just swing at whatever he had. It was also a year where he was really starting to wear down. Again, he was in high A 3 months before, and now he's facing major league pitching or major league hitters because of injuries. So the Twins right now 7 deep. Feel good about that. The reinforcements on top of that would be these three here. Marco Raya has been in the organization for a while. Throws mid 90s, grades out as 50 overall prospect. The person I'm going to talk about the most, because it's fun, Corey Lewis. Kind of the same thing, except for he throws a knuckleball, which you don't see those anymore. So that'll be kind of fun to see. He's all three of them are going to start in St. Paul, which is their AAA affiliate. If any of the first 7 guys we just talked about jump, or first 7 guys get injured, these are the next 3. So the Twins 1 to 10 are deep and legitimate major league caliber starters, which should keep them in a lot of games if there's injuries. Now I'm just going to finish up with the bullpen, this beautiful bullpen that kind of projected the same way last year. It definitely has its red flags, but they have a potential three-headed monster going into the season. Joan Duran used to throw 104. That's kind of disappeared. He's probably the biggest red flag right now. If you're just looking for like where it could all go wrong, he's throwing at 101, which is fine. That's definitely enough to get by, but you do kind of wonder why he was throwing 104 2 years ago, and now he's struggling to get to 100, 101. So that'll be something to watch on. He does have a really good curveball that throws at 86, and then he has an off-speed pitch. His splint, they call it a splinker, which is a splitter and a sinker, and he can throw that at 98. He's hard to hit off of. Griffin Jacks had a monster year last year. Used to be a really fringe starting rotation prospect, got his brains beat in, and then they switched him to a reliever. He has a five pitch mix as a reliever and keeps adding velocity to it. So he only sits at about 90. Well, he's sitting at 97. He might even top out 100 if that pattern continues. The difference between those two and then Brock Stewart, who everyone we've been kind of dreaming on, if you're looking closely, I did have to pull up his 2023 percentiles because last year he didn't pitch much. He has been, when he's healthy, like unhittable. He has pitched 43 innings for the Twins. He has 56 strikeouts, few walks, throws 97, tops out at 100. He just can't stay healthy. So they're gonna have to be really careful with him. And then Cole Sands took a huge step forward last year too. That was about. Sorry, that was weird.
What happens in 10 seconds?
It's just a countdown. So that was weird. Someone I did not talk about. I'll just talk about really quick. Is Louis Varland, who is another starting prospect that hasn't fanned out. He can't. They're finally putting him in the bullpen. He was in a game yesterday and was throwing 99. So the bullpen projects to be pretty deep. Danny Colom's back. Justin Topa's back from Seattle. Don't quite know what you're getting from them, but their bullpen might be 5 or 6, 7 deep. So I'm very very excited for the pitching staff, even but with the lineup, there's a couple question marks there.
Still a very well-rounded team, seems like.
Yeah, it's the same story as always, right? So they have on paper, and like I said, I think they're a step above everyone in the division. It's just can they stay healthy? The answer the last 5 years has been no, they can't. So we'll see what happens with them. I did want to just pull this article to kind of back up what I said at the start. This is just Sportskeeda. I believe they took this from Fangraphs, which is Zips, their projection system. The postseason odds for the Twins are the only team in the division with projected over 50% playoff odds. Everyone else is kind of in the 47. I don't quite agree with the Guardians one because I feel like they always overachieve and they always end up being second or first. We'll see.
Us and the Rays, for some reason, the projections never get it right.
Yeah, for decades, and Cleveland has the ability again just to find a no-name starting pitching prospect, and they call them up, and they're a solid number 3, and they stay in a bunch of games, and then
What you said about Zebby strikes me, like in particular, like he's the archetype. Like let's go find a guy who throws strikes. We can teach him, mechanically how to throw a little harder and how to spin it, and go from there. Like
yeah,
he's exactly it.
I'm just gonna go.
So how do you have the division shaking out?
I have. So I have the Twins first, and then I have to go with Cleveland because I've been burned too many. I've always thought Cleveland's good, but they're always second. I think going from there, it's Tigers, Royals, White Sox. I don't really have records for you, but I feel fairly confident in that order. But I think the Twins also have the widest outcome. If they're not healthy, I mean, if they don't have a combination of Lewis, Correa, and Buxton, It's going to be really hard for that lineup to overcome because they're about five deep right now, and then you hope for some prospect luck, and then if you can get anything out of Lee or Miranda or Julian, they can be a dangerous lineup. But if Lewis, Buxton, and Correa each play under 100 games, that's what happened last year, and they collapsed. So
Yeah, so what was it? Injuries at the end of last year that happened, or did they just all forget how to play baseball? Like, what was going on there?
it was kind of both. So it was injuries, yes. So Correa had plantar fasciitis. He was out for about a month. Buxton was out for about a month. And then you were relying on young players. So, like Lewis, the way his prospectum came up, Lewis was drafted in 2017, was pretty decent until but then he had the COVID season where they didn't play any competitive baseball, tore his ACL the year after that, tore his ACL the year after that, and then he just had injury issues. So he's only played 150 major league games. So he wore. I think the concern with him, and why his production plummeted, he, Jose Miranda, Julian, they all worn out. They were all worn out, and they ran out of gas by the end of the season. Joe Ryan also got injured halfway through the season, and you had Zebby Matthews step up. But and it was great to see Zebby Matthews last year, except for, I mean, he wasn't ready for major league pitching. He flew past the minor leagues and just he probably wasn't just ready, and he got his brains beat in.
One thing I noticed too, that's a very good rotation. I agree. You've got three guys that are rock solid at the top, and the back end of the bullpen with Duran and Jax is excellent. But how did that equate to the 21st ERA in the league last year? Like that was part of what I was looking at too. Is you would think it would have been better statistically.
So part of that was Pablo, because Pablo, he's kind of a if you look at just his core numbers or his traditional numbers, ERA, sorry,
I should have
they're
looked
not
at Finn
that
as well.
impressive. He they always point to him like he got hit, he got a death by a thousand cuts. Like he would give up five hits in 6 innings, but all of those hits would just be in the same inning, and he'd give up 3 or 4 runs. And he did that a couple years ago, but then he went through a stretch where he gave up 2 runs over six, and he was a Cy Young candidate. And it just that lasted longer last year, but by the near the end, that's when he figured out. So his ERA was a bit inflated. Bailey Ober is probably the most consistent pitcher they had, except for last year. Sam, you probably remember this, but the Royals had his number. He
Hmm.
had a couple games where he gave up 6 and 8 runs in an inning and a third. He had to have been tipping, or they had something on him because it was. And then he had a couple of those blow ups, and then
The
Joe
Royals
Ryan.
do that. The Royals do that with Scooble too. For some reason, they're the only team that that always beats him. For some reason,
Yeah,
it's weird. What do the Royals have? What do you know?
I think I was at that game early, one of those games earlier in the year where last year where they scored I think 8 runs or 6 or 7 or 8 runs in the first inning. So yeah, I think it would be nice if they could do that against the pitchers that they're supposed to do that against as well.
right. So yeah, there was a lot of blowups, and then you had Joe Ryan. He's a sinker. He's a sinker fastball guy. So if the sinker doesn't sink that day, he gets lit up. So there's a couple of that, but and then you just had Zebby, who I think had a 5 ERA. Louis Varland was the sixth starter. He started real early because I think Chris Paddock was out for a while, and he had an 8 ERA over 50 innings, and he was sunk.
Some fumbling around to figure out who's 4 and 5. It sounds like.
Yeah, and what's frustrating is the Twins will not I don't like Paddock. I don't. It's not that I don't like him. It's I don't have faith in him. He used to have a lot of hype as a prospect for the Padres, but he just hasn't lived up to it. He's been too injured. I'd rather just see David Festa in the fourth spot, and then you still have enough depth. But the Twins refuse to ever cut a veteran for the sake of cutting them. So, yeah. With that, that's my season preview for the Twins. It's probably really wordy. Hopefully, I don't have to eat my words at the end of the year by saying they're a step above everyone else, but well, it's the fun in the season, right?
Yeah. So, what is there any updates on the ownership situation?
Not really. So the speculation is that they were really like they basically chose Ishbia to buy the team, and as soon as he went back to the White Sox, they had other suitors, but when it was Ishbia and company, they said there was a robust market to buy the team. And then if you take out Ishbia, now there was it was like a suitable amount of suitors. So like, okay, robust was probably a bit strong, but they had a guy picked, so why not say it? They're probably going to look at All Star break. They might announce someone, but it does open up that maybe the Polads don't sell the team. They just have an interesting dynamic. It's more their third generation grandchildren from the guy who bought the team, and there's like 20 grandchildren, and not all of them love baseball. So we'll see.
I hope that's one of those things like 10 years from now, you guys are like, I can't believe we let the Sox get Ishbia. Now they've won all these World Series.
I think that's kind of fun though. Like, yes, I'm going to really hate it, but I do like 10 years from now, yes, a Justin Ishbia White Sox versus whoever buys the Twins in like an ALCS. That's just fun, but I also grew up hating the White Sox, and that I liked having that rivalry to hate.
Hey, if
Yeah.
there's two new owners in the division, maybe that'll encourage the rest of the owners to do stuff.
Three,
Look at it.
Cleveland's getting a new one here in the next.
Oh, that's right.
No timetable on that, but at some point.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Pizza Boy. Spend money.
When did the Royals sell, Sam?
The Royals sold back in 2019, end of 2019, beginning of 2020 is when they sold to John Sherman and the current group that owns them, including but not limited to Patrick Mahomes and Eric Stone Street.
Of course, you have to have Patrick Mahomes. Was Witt going to them part by the Chiefs then, just because he can?
I mean, maybe, but that's the Chiefs have been. I think the Chiefs have the fewest number of owners of any because it's just been the Hunt family for its entire existence. So they've only ever had the one, the obviously Lamar and now Clark. So maybe Bobby will buy a stake in Sporting KC or you know
Yeah, we'll see. It's that or Taylor Swift who
T-Bones
buys
or
everything.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Chris.
Bobby just needs to start dating Olivia Rodrigo or Sabrina Carpenter or one of those.
Yeah, because
Or
he's like,
Livy Dunn, they ain't married.
Yeah,
I
let's
do
move.
think Bobby actually. I do think he got married this off season. Bobby did. So
They always do. So young and hot. Whatever.
you're not better.
No, not at all.
Oh yeah. Well, Chris Illich is getting divorced, so there's who knows what that'll do for in terms of his ownership because he also owns the Red Wings
I mean,
too.
divorce is forcing what forced the Padres to sell a decade ago, and now that owner died, and now it's a legal battle between the widow and the family right now. So
Yeah.
they have to sell off parts at this point.
Well, the divorce court is famously incredibly quick, so we'll know very soon. No, so who knows what's going to go on with that? But if they, I don't think they would sell. But if they do sell, they have to legally obligated to sell to another pizza company because the Tigers have been owned by pizza companies for like 50 years now,
Well,
going
how
back
will they
that
have
far.
the Little Caesar pizza on the Trident or whatever that spear was last
Yeah,
year?
that was fun last year. But yeah, because they're owned by Illiches, who have also Little Caesars. But before that, the previous owners were the owners of Domino's.
Hmm.
So they've been owned by pizza companies for like 50 years.
This is random, but does anyone remember the Twins' rally sausage last year?
Oh
Oh
yeah, the
god,
one
that
like
stupid rally
turned
sausage.
like putrid.
Yeah, and like they couldn't go around it, and like they would sometimes zoom in on it like 3 weeks into this, like after using it, and like Rocco was saying like he doesn't want anyone touching it outside the package. Yeah,
Wasn't
it
it
was
at a certain point? Didn't like the pilot wouldn't let it on like the team plane out of like a hazard or something?
I think it wasn't the pilot. It was like a team manager. So they had to keep it in a cooler and like they had to like keep it in the back because it was starting to like smell. Like it's the most like stupid baseball superstition you can imagine. Especially it's also very Minnesotan is to have a summer sausage as your
Yeah.
so.
But Jim Leland famously did not change his underwear for like a week when the Tigers were on a winning streak one time back in like 2012 or something. So
Well, that's
it's
right.
been weirder.
But all right, well, I think that'll do us for today. Thank you everyone for listening and joining in for us. We'll probably be back a little bit sooner because we still need to get Cleveland, and then it's time for the real show. It's opening day, about less than a week or a week or so for us. Even regular season technically started at the Tokyo series, so
Yeah, but this is real opening day. That's fake
Are
opening
are
day.
any of the teams playing against each other for opening day?
I think the White Sox and the Royals are.
Okay, is that it?
It's the Royals and the Guardians, I
I thought we
believe.
were playing the
Or
Royals.
I thought the Royals are involved in somewhere.
Oh, the Sox are opening against the Angels.
yeah. Twins are playing
Yeah,
St. Louis against Sonny Gray, so that'll be fun.
It's always
The
the
Tigers
early
are
of the year with interleague.
Guardians.
Tigers are starting up against the Dodgers to start off in LA. So it's going to be Skubal versus Yamamoto to start off the.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
No pressure.
Yeah, it's gonna be a hell of a matchup to start off. And then our home opener is because we do Dodgers then Mariners, then our home opener is against the White Sox. So
All right.
There we go.
With that, we'll see you guys next time.